This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Lewis Hamilton did not sugarcoat his words after the 2025 Spanish Grand Prix. I've had a really bad day, there's nothing else to add to it. It was terrible, I have no idea why it was so bad. That was the worst race I've experienced balance-wise. The Dream Ferrari has had its moments, but broadly speaking, in the 9 of 24 rounds we've had so far this season, it's not been great. Yet I stand here after Lewis's most scathing Ferrari post-race presser to date, with hope. Misguided perhaps, but it's there. All is not lost, Lewis fans. The boy from Stevenage can still come good to Fossey. I believe it. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. 2 words. British bias. Done. Video over. Complete. Look, I know some of you are going to comment that down below, and fine. Look, just hold that comment until the end of the video, okay? Just hear me out. Give me a fair crack. Discuss this, the nuances of the situation. And then if you still feel that way, fine. But I do think there is reason to be optimistic for the future. The scrutiny that revolves not just Lewis, and when you're a 4-time, a 7-time world champion, you do get held to a higher standard than the average F1 driver. Whether we're talking about Max's incident in Spain, which was wrong, he definitely deserved more of a penalty, just to clarify my position on that. But if someone at the back of the field is putting one of them moves, it's not a headline that it is. Of course it's not, right? Of course world champions, of course the most high profile drivers are held to a higher standard. That's just the way it is. But no one is held to a higher standard than Lewis. 7 world champions, the most successful decorated driver of all time. And that increased scrutiny definitely plays into the way that this Ferrari move has been covered, both in the hype that was given to it beforehand. Again, a bang average driver going to Ferrari is not given anywhere near the eyeballs that Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari is, obviously. But also when it has gone wrong, when things have been a struggle this year, there is also increased scrutiny, criticism, eyeballs, because it's Lewis. And then you add into the equation that his character, just the way that Lewis is, he's very, very heart on sleeve. He speaks his mind. If he's having a great day and buzzing and gassed, you see it, it shines through. And when he's not, when he's struggling, when he's down, he really is on himself. He's very kind of, I think Lando takes a leaf out of Lewis's book in that regard. They're both very, very transparent with their emotions and their feelings. And when you are transparent, it can be used against you, and particularly when you're in that increased scrutiny bracket of a top tier F1 driver, it all just comes together to paint a very extreme picture of Lewis. So it's very hard as a fan to kind of get through all the media and the chat and all that to really discern what is the actual situation, what is actually, how bad is it really going. Now, there was always going to be a lot to learn moving to Ferrari after your entire career spread over 2 teams and 2 long stints at those teams. McLaren from 2007 to 2012, and then Mercedes from 2013 till last season. A very long career with 0 breaks in it as well. You know, Alonso's taken breaks. Kimi Raikkonen, of course, he took breaks. He had a very, very long career, didn't he? Mercedes, McLaren, they're not that far apart in the middle of the UK. A lot of cross-pollination between these British-based teams, and certainly Sauber and Ferrari being the only 2 teams. Racing Bulls are moving most of their stuff to Red Bull kind of gradually, aren't they, in Milton Keynes. So for Ferrari and Sauber to, you know, thrive and get the best staff and talent is tough. And it does mean also that those teams are very culturally different to the vast majority that are based in the UK. It's a new lifestyle for Lewis as well, being based out of Maranello, this whole different fan base. You know, Ferrari is more like a football team where there is genuine loyalty, passion for the badge, the crest. You can't say the same for really any other team. McLaren's probably the next closest, where you do get diehard McLaren fans. But Ferrari is on another level in terms of absolute adoration, absolute support, absolute belief, absolute tifosi. There's not what's the equivalent for McLaren? The Papayans or something. And then just the people you're directly working with. Obviously, Bono hasn't been able to come over with him. Angela has come back, which is nice to see, and that will certainly help having a friendly face. And there will be certain members of staff who have also kind of made the transition. It's a big change to happen right at the end of your career as well. He's 40 years of age, Lewis, remember. He's older than Vettel, older than Rosberg. These are 2 drivers who have been retired for quite a while now. Now, we know Lewis is a very entrepreneurial individual. He's got a lot of businesses going on, and say you've got your own little business and you want to build your very own beautiful website to host said business, be that product, be that service, be that a blog, a portfolio, whatever you'll need. Squarespace is the place to go. You should check them out. With thousands of beautiful drag and drop templates at your fingertips. Gone are the days where you need to be some coding genius to build a website. With AI powered design intelligence built into Squarespace, it's honestly an absolute breeze to build something you can be really proud of. Then you add the built-in SEO tools to make sure people find your website, market and email campaigns to keep your customers up to date, and invoicing all built in. Squarespace has everything you need, particularly if you're a small to medium sized business, to get the job done. And best of all, it's completely free to try. There is no risk. It's only when you want to publish your finished website live to the world that you have to actually pay anything. And that's where I come in, because if you head to squarespace.com/TOMMO'S1, you can get 10% off of your very first website or domain. It was always going to be an uphill battle, but you got to say, the quicker you find issues, the less you sugarcoat things, the more direct to the point you are, the quicker fixes, in theory, should come about. You don't want a culture where it's a blame culture, people feel like they can't put their hand up. You want to confront things head on. You want to expose problems so that they can be fixed. And Lewis doesn't have time to hang about. He doesn't have time to be overly polite and overly nice. He needs to achieve. He needs to set himself up for a 2026, because it's obviously not going to happen this year. This is top tier competitive sport. You've got McLaren flying at the minute. Mercedes will probably have the best engine from 26 onwards. Red Bull, I mean, Max is just an inevitability. He can't afford to walk on eggshells around this team. He's got to be assertive and strong with his points, because he's already shown he still won a race in China. He's the only non-McLaren or Verstappen driver to win any race of any kind this season. Even his quali head-to-head with Charles Leclerc. Look, it's not been amazing. It's 8-3 in terms of head-to-head over the 11 sessions, including sprint qualies, that we've had so far this season. But the average delta, 0.184 of a second advantage Charles. It's within 2/10, which is honestly better than I thought it would be. Charles is an absolute demon, quali pace. He's still exceptional. Max has got that clutch gene. He's been showing it time again recently, but Charles is one of the, if not the best overlap. He's been at this team since 2019. Okay, he's very, very much bedded in. He is the present and the future beyond Lewis Hamilton. Lewis will be aware of that and know that. Yeah, he can average within a couple of tenths of Leclerc. That's a strong place to be, I think. And if he can just maintain that gap, ideally get it a bit closer, but even a couple of tenths as we move into 26, where it should in theory be less of a qualifying formula, then Lewis's racecraft, his race ability should, in theory, hopefully, shine through, right? We saw Fernando, 43-year-old Fernando Alonso, putting in some unbelievable moves in Spain. His racecraft has not gone anywhere, right? You could argue maybe Fernando's lost a little bit of a half a tenth or so at the absolute peak, and you could say the same about Lewis. Fine, races aren't won on Saturday. I mean, okay, they kind of are in this current regulation cycle, but certainly when they clean up this dirty air, when they get the active aero on these cars, they put the push to pass, they're a bit smaller, a bit thinner tyres, a bit less downforce. I think that raceability and drivers like Lewis and Fernando will, I think, give a better reflection of themselves than this current spec of car, where it's a big yacht that has loads of dirty air. You can't really be too aggressive with these cars. You've got to be quite smooth with them because you want to retain that aerodynamic platform. It doesn't play to the strengths of drivers like Lewis and Fernando, but I think 26 and onwards, I think they could. Look, Ferrari was always a risk, not just because changing teams at any point is a risk, but Ferrari have long been a team that have a lot of promise and have not delivered on said promise. I think that's very, very fair to say. No drivers' title since 2007, no constructors since 2008. And they got close last year for sure. And Fred, I think broadly speaking, has done a very, very, very good job since he came into that role. And this is his first kind of big hurdle. And it is a big hurdle because they've seriously wobbled at the start of 25. Even though Charles, has been more comfortable in the car as of late, it's still not where they want it to be. And I mean, I found this quote from Fred, this was pre-season. We're in the 4th year of applying these regulations and we know our previous project very well. The 2025 car shares less than 1% of the 24 car. To have such a strong end to last season, Charles outscored everyone in the second half of 24, almost won the Constructors' Championship. To then change 99% of the car, which is what we're taking from Fred's statement here, be no more competitive, relatively actually be less competitive, to have spent so much resource that 99% change of car, that's resource that has been designated for 25, could have been spent on pre-preparing 26. Like, if Ferrari's 2026 package, not so much the engine, because that's a kind of separate thing, but if their aero package in 26 is trash, then this statement is going to age horrifically from Fred. Why were we wasting all this effort on a 25 car that we didn't even improve, and we didn't even win the world title, we didn't even get close to beating McLaren with, and now we've also ourselves for 26 onwards? Like, I hope that's not how it turns out, but I am concerned. It is very tough viewing, seeing Lewis be so dejected and so down on himself, and it's tough seeing any driver, you know, seeing really struggling just in themselves, in that confidence. But I would say that Lewis has kind of addressed this. There is this really good, well, I'll just play the clip from a chat Brundle did with Hamilton 5 or so years ago.
Sometimes, is it strategic when you're on the radio going, I don't think I can do another 3 corners with these tyres or whatever? Are you sending a message out to the competition?
No, you know what I realize is that that's just how I am. Noticed this winter through training, and I'm with my trainer, and I'm like, he's like, do you think you can go up on the weight? And I'm like, I feel knackered already. I don't think I can do it. And then I was like, put the weight up. And then, you know, you punch the weight out. So, you know, the moment of doubt, which I think is only human, but it doesn't mean I'm going to give up. That's what I'm fighting with. If you're just driving around the whole time, no problem, I've got it. I think that's kind of not really human. I think they're just human reactions that are coming out.
You're on the radio, you're having a moan and a groan, but you're still going forward at a great rate or not.
Yeah, well, I have no choice. But I think it's really because the worry is if I make this small mistake and lose this to you guys, I'm never going to forgive myself. That's that dark and positive. I'm just constantly being, this one's more, the noise is bigger here. And he's just chewing at me. I'm like, no, I can. But it is helpful when the team come on and say, you know what, you can do it, you know, because you feel like you're alone out there a lot of the time.
The understanding that Lewis had with Bono was cultivated over 11 years at that Mercedes team with each other. So that's going to take time. Ferrari need to try and understand, right, what is Lewis saying when he says these things on the radio? What is he communicating? Where his mental state actually at? You can say something very dramatic and very over the top, but actually in here you might actually be much calmer than the words coming out your mouth are, or vice versa. You know, maybe Oscar Piastri, when he's super chill and just calm, in his head is like, ah! It's about understanding the human, and this is where, of course, the criticism and the scrutiny on that relationship with Lewis and Ricciardo is huge, right? With Ricciardo Adami and Lewis Hamilton, that is so important, a driver and their race engineer. And I think it's too early to say whether Adami is the right person for Lewis. And we're comparing that to Lewis's time with Bono, where it was just very smooth, and Bono knew how to diffuse and handle Lewis when he was getting ahead of himself emotionally. And even, like, you know, GP and Max Verstappen, you know, this is one of the most established driver race engineer pairings in F1, and they still have their moments, of course they do, and Lewis and Bono had their moments. So jumping into this 25 car where Lewis would have had expectations that it was going to be way more competitive than it actually is, looking at how that car ended 2024, particularly in the hands of Charles Leclerc, he'll be frustrated by that. But I go back to what I said at the start. In fact, I go back to what James Vowles has been saying over recent years about Williams now prior to the regulation change. Break everything. You know, break everything, stress test everything, so that then you can implement fixes. 2025 is the year Lewis needs to break everything, stress test to know what he needs in order to prepare himself for a 26 title fight. Because realistically, even if this Ferrari we have right now was equally as competitive as it was last year, so it was fighting McLaren's for race wins, right? If it had a couple of more tenths, basically in race pace, I think Lewis would still be the driver struggling. Maybe he'd win a race or two. I think Charles would do the majority of the winning, the majority of the challenging for the title, because Lewis would still be getting his feet under the table, getting settled, qualifying deficit to Charles, etc, etc. And while it is a qualifying formula at the moment, that would hurt him. That would hurt him more than I think it will hurt him in 26 onwards. So, I mean, in some ways, it's kind of double-edged sword. It's not actually all that bad that this Ferrari isn't actually the best, if not second close to McLaren best car, because I don't think Lewis is in a place right now to fully maximize the Ferrari car underneath him. And I think to expect him to be would be pretty insane, given how long he's been at Mercedes, McLaren, and how long Charles has been at this team, and how different the culture and the changes like so late on in your career. Like, to expect Lewis to be 100% straight out the gates is ridiculous. But if he does want to get close to that 100%, you kind of in some ways need a year like this where it's just a bit of a mess, and then put together a proper plan for 26 where again these cars are slipperier, you know, push to pass, should be more racy, smaller, thinner tyres. That's where Lewis's magic, his racecraft, you know, over his time with George Russell at Mercedes, you know, George definitely had the quality advantage over him over the course of their time as teammates, but Lewis equally almost always had the race advantage over George. The amount of times George would qualify here, Lewis would qualify here, and they'd end up together. Well, that only happens if the guy behind is quicker than the guy in front. Now, this could look, obviously this could age poorly, very poorly in 26 if Lewis is absolutely nowhere, but I just don't, I never did, and now we're in it. I just don't see a way that Lewis doesn't have a really difficult first year, just ingratiating himself within that team in order to prepare for a 26 title challenge where he'll probably consistently qualify behind Charles Leclerc. But when Lewis maximizes his race performance, he's better than anyone. I'm super interested to hear what you think in the comments down below. Whether you're a Lewis Hamilton fan or not, however you sit on him, what do you make of this year? Are you overly concerned? Because again, the more I think about it, the more I deep it, I'm like, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you know what that analogy means. You know, I don't want to go crazy with like, oh, he's had a few bad performances. It's all gone wrong. Like, he still won a sprint race. He's not that far off Charles in qualifying. He's closer than I thought it'd be. I think there's room for hope there. But let me know your thoughts and feelings as always down below. Thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video. Clutch as per. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.